Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and you're all very welcome to this session of the SEAI Energy Show. The title of this afternoon session is The Role of Bioenergy in Decarbonising Ireland. My name is Sean Finan and I'm the CEO of the Irish Bioenergy Association, and I'm your MC for today's session. I would like to thank the SEAI for the opportunity to present this session, and thanks to all our attendees and delegates who are logging on in such huge numbers for this session this afternoon. Before I introduce our speakers, just a brief introduction to the Irish Bioenergy Association and what we do. Our organisation was established in 1999. We represent the voice of the Irish Bioenergy Association, Irish bioenergy sector on the island of Ireland, covering the areas of biomass, biogas, biofuels, biochar, wood fuels and energy crops. Our main work is in the area of policy, lobbying and advocacy, and we have a broad and diverse ranging membership. You can find out more about our organisation at www.erbia.org. To open our session today, we're delighted to be joined by the CEO of SEAI, William Walsh. William is the Chief Executive Officer in SEAI, having previously held both the positions of Chief Operations Officer and Chief Financial Officer. William joined in 2013. Prior to joining SEAI, he worked for IFI, where he held a number of roles, including Assistant Chief Executive Officer and Director. And prior to that, he held senior management positions in the private sector. William is a chartered accountant, holds a Bachelor of Business Studies from Dublin City University and a graduate diploma in Strategy, Innovation and Change from UCD. Our opening session is also joined by Paddy Phelan. Paddy Phelan is the CEO of the Three County Energy Agency and the President of the Irish Bioenergy Association. Paddy is also a member of the Irish Energy Storage Association and the Executive Committee member of the Irish Wind Farmers Association. He is a graduate of the School of Engineering, UCD, in 2000 and a board member of SEAI between 2015 and 2018, with expertise on energy, communities, technical and entrepreneurship. I would like to call on William to address you, and then following William on Paddy. So over to you, William.
Thanks very much, Sean, and thank you everyone for attending the Energy Show this year. And thanks to Erbia, to Paddy and Sean for the opportunity to say a few words this afternoon. The show this year is virtual due to COVID-19, but it's great to be able to facilitate it virtually. And we're looking forward to meeting everyone face to face in 2021. Despite this challenge, it's proving to be very successful, and we're very happy with the positive feedback we're receiving from attendees. In many ways, the virtual format extends our audience and potential reach, and never more has it been more timely than in 2021. The Programme for Government and Climate Bill has firmly set the level in Ireland, 7% annually and 51% by 2030, and then to follow on net zero by 2050. The scale and extent of this target is groundbreaking, certainly from Ireland's performance towards previous 2020 targets. In the area of renewable electricity generation mix on our grid, Ireland is emerging as a leader, and we endeavour to further extend to 70% penetration during this next time frame. The decarbonisation of heat, however, is much more complex, and one that we're not doing so well. Renewables will make up less than 7% of total fuels used in the heat sector. This is the lowest in the EU, and last year heat emissions actually increased by 6.4%. Oil, gas and solid fuels used for heating are responsible for close on 20% of Ireland's annual emissions. Unfortunately, the application and demand for heat is not homogeneous. It ranges from supply of domestic heating to industrial process heating and everything in between. It demands from simple hot water to high-grade steam with different configurations of demand and quality. Added to this, it depends on innovation and the heat user investment behaviour to change. This signifies the complexity of the transition to solutions that provide heat from alternative renewable sources, switching away from traditional fossil technologies. We will hear today about the role that bioenergy will play in heat decarbonisation. SEAI are working hard on the analysis of appropriate policy mix to achieve the decarbonisation by 2050, including the role and viability that bioenergy will play. It entails a thorough understanding of the current and forecasted national heating and cooling demand. We are assessing the viable technology and fuel options. It will include cost-benefit analysis and provide scenario-based insights for policy development. Everything is on the table: bioenergy, availability of bioenergy, biomethane, hydrogen, heat networks, thermal generation technologies, carbon capture, utilisation and storage. An important aspect of SEAI's work is the wide stakeholder engagement and the output of the wider research communities so that all outputs can be in balance. SEAI have close engagement with RBIA, being an industry group within the bioenergy value chain in Ireland and its promotion in the uptake of bioenergy. The SSRH scheme is an existing scheme incentivising the switch from fossil fuels to heat from biomass, anaerobic digestion and heat pumps. We have a lot of work to do here, and RBIA are playing a critical role in its promotion. And we are looking forward to working closely, from an SEA perspective, with RBIA over the coming months and years in help addressing this sector. I want to take the opportunity to thank RBIA for the role they play and look forward to listening to the presentations and discussions this afternoon. Thank you very much, and I'll hand you over to Paddy.
Thank you, William. Thank you all very much. Welcome to everybody, and on behalf of the Irish Bioenergy Association, I wish to thank the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland for putting this piece together today on the role of bioenergy in decarbonising the energy system, and for their work they've been doing to get this energy show online virtually this year. It's not to be underestimated in the world of COVID. So thank you, SEAI. My name is Paddy Phelan, and I'm now entering into my second year as president of the Irish Bioenergy Association, having been on the executive committee since 2013. I wish to acknowledge the great work of Sean Finan and his team at RBIA and their achievements in pushing bioenergy back up the priority list of areas to decarbonise Ireland's energy sector, particularly amongst the many decision makers nationally on behalf of its members. The SSRH was launched and is up and running with projects now on the payment cycle. And RBIA have been working very closely with SEAI over the past number of months to unlock some of the challenges that have been met. And we now see the opportunity to ramp up significantly the number of projects or buildings that can enter into that programme, both in terms of renewable heat and renewable gas. And RBIA continue to work very closely with SEAI to unlock this scheme. More generally, there has been decades of under-delivery in this country on renewable heat and transport targets. The 2020 renewable energy targets falling well short across particularly renewable heat and transport. Renewable electricity and electrification of heat and transport has been the policy focus. But in reality, through my vast experience across all the energy technologies, with grid constraints, curtailment, and grid infrastructure improvement projects not being able to keep a pace with the decarbonising targets for many years now, we do see bioenergy as a real opportunity over the next decade of decarbonisation. I believe with my work across the Energy Agency and the various actors in the industry that bioenergy as an indigenous, locally sourced, dispatchable energy source that can deliver large emissions reduction across every energy community in Ireland. In my work with SEAI in the Southeast region, we've completed a high-level assessment conducted of how rural energy supply can and should meet urban energy demand across all technologies. And this is an opportunity for us to decarbonise right down at community level through our work with the Reg Energy Interreg project and its international partners. Personally, with over 10 years personal experience working with the energy sector with a specific focus on bioenergy, it's been an extremely frustrating time for this sector. With a lack of sufficient policy developments or supports historically to properly plan to decarbonise the heat and transport sector. The policy focus or favour being renewable electricity supports through the years. An emphasis on low-cost optimal approach with no considerations for the multiple benefits around jobs, rural employment, exchequer benefits versus imported fossil fuel revenue. Every community taking local energy production across biomass, biomethane, hydrogen, heat networks, and all of the other innovative thermal generation technologies. All the while, Ireland seeing great progress in increasing the percentages of renewable electricity on the Irish electricity system. The towards 70% renewable electricity by 2030 set in the 2019 Climate Action Plan has seen great programmes like Renewable Electricity Support Scheme 1 and 2 auctions due later this year, and the upcoming micro-generation electricity programme later in 2021. Great supports for electric car vehicles and so on and so forth. Electricity presently accounts for just over 20% of Ireland's energy demand. Heat, on the other hand, in 2018 accounted for 40% of the overall energy demand and was responsible for 14 million tonnes of CO2 emitted, which makes 22% of the overall 61.7 million tonnes of CO2 emitted in Ireland. To support this vision of the industry, coordinated by the Irish Bioenergy Association, Renewable Energy Ireland will next week be launching, on behalf of its members across all of the renewable energy associations and industry sectors and technologies, to launch the 40 by 30 plan. It sets a vision to 2030 on how the Irish government, through a comprehensive and well-thought list of actions, can deliver 40% renewable heat by 2030 across the Irish energy system. The plan has identified the potential resources, the technologies, the costs, and sets out a clear pathway and a new vision to deliver the 7% carbon emissions reduction by 2030. I call on the Minister and his government to act immediately following the publication of this report next week and adopt the 40 by 30 renewable heat plan from Renewable Energy Ireland into the upcoming revision of the Climate Action Plan, to ramp up the supports around bioenergy to decarbonise the sector. Policymakers will need to refocus the actions to support the transition of heat and transport away from fossil fuels such as imported oil and gas to deliver the significant emissions reductions set out within the programme for government, and we believe that bioenergy has a key role to play in this, set out in that plan. I wish to thank SEAI again and to all the people coordinating this event today. It's great to see such a good turnout, and on behalf of the Irish Bioenergy Association, we look forward to working with all the actors in SEAI, government and across the Renewable Energy Ireland platform to deliver this plan over the next 10 years. Thank you all very much.
Thanks very much, Paddy, for your contribution. And I now call on our first presenter today, who is Teresa Patton. Teresa is the Programme Manager at Green Generation in Kildare, is an avid believer in the circular economy and using waste as a resource. As a recent MBA graduate, she brings with her a new direct perspective on sustainability and climate change. She's an advocate for unlocking Ireland's potential as a green leader across Europe. So Teresa will present on the role bioenergy plays in the circular economy and in the decarbonisation of transport. So it's now over to you, Teresa.
Thank you, Sean, for the lovely introduction. And I wanted to first start by saying a big thank you to the team at SEAI and to Airbia as well. We're really excited to be taking part today in this enormously important conversation. So quickly about us, we're Green Generation. We're based in Nerney, County Kildare, and we turn food waste into renewable gas. Green Generation started out first as a way of processing pig slurry on our adjoining pig farm, and for the first number of years we grew fairly organically, with some well-known food manufacturers coming to us as a way to process their food waste. The company grew from there, and so what we do again is we turn food waste into renewable gas, as I've said, and we do this through a process called anaerobic digestion, which you'll see in the navy picture on the screen there. Now, for those of you on here that know what the anaerobic digestion process is, please bear with me, but part of my role with Green Generation is to make sure that everyone's understanding the process from start to finish. So the anaerobic digestion is the microbial breakdown of organisms in the absence of oxygen. It's the same 4-stage process that happens in cows' stomachs. So there's two things that come out of the AD process: digestate and biogas. On the bottom left of the screen there, you'll see this digestate, which is used on local farms as a high quality eco-fertilizer. The other then is biogas, which we upgrade on site into biomethane, and this is also known as renewable gas. So biomethane is a clean, renewable and carbon neutral fuel. We use it to power our operations on site, in our HGVs, but crucially in terms of the circular economy, especially, we inject it back into the national grid at Cush. but I'll get back to that later. So we're big believers in the circular economy and its benefits. On the top right of the screen there, you'll see the Industrial Development Organization circular economy plotted out. The premise of the circular economy is that we need to move away from the industrial model of take, make, waste. We need to rethink how we see raw materials because we live on a planet of finite resources. The main tool against waste is to first design it out at source, which is the optimal. Optimizing the useful life of raw materials is what it's all about. Then come all the R's. So we've got repairing, reusing, reduce, replace, regenerate, and recycle. And then lastly is the reuse of waste as a feedstock for renewable energy. Now, across Ireland, we have 1 million tonnes of food waste every year. Some of it going to AD, some of it going to compost, but sadly, an awful lot of it's still going to landfill. So our main aim here is to make as good a use of this food waste as we can. So to give you an idea of the extent of the global food waste problem, if food waste were a country on its own, it would come third only to China and the United States in its greenhouse gas emissions. But therein sort of lies an opportunity as well. While no one wants any food waste, we can actually use that food waste and pull some value out of it. So only 7%, the GIE and the EBA released a report last year saying that only 7% of all anaerobic digestion plants across Europe are using food waste as their feedstock. And then you'll see the second graph down there. Ireland, we've long been described as the laggards of Europe. We've only one biomethane plant injecting back into the national grid, but you'll see Denmark there sort of halfway down. Denmark has a little over just under 1 million more people than us, and they're using 2/3 of the space, but they managed to have, I think it's 47 biomethane plants across the country, which is extraordinary for a small country. So we should be looking to replicate that. Now, to give you an idea of what we do on site, our process is that we bring all of our food in and everything is weighed. So at number 1 there, you'll see the black truck coming in. He takes a slight left turn and he goes to the intake at number 2. From there, we process the food in 2 different ways. If it comes from a manufacturer, it goes straight to the AD towers. If it comes from one of our retail partners, such as Tesco, the food is depackaged, plastic goes one way, food waste goes the other, and again, straight into the AD process, which happens at number 3. Once then the organic material is broken down, we capture the gas at number 4. And then, as I said before, we upgrade it on site, which is the very exciting part of our circular economy. Once it's upgraded on site, then our circular economy really kicks in. So last May, the Cush injection point was opened. Green Generation is the only renewable gas company in the country commissioned to inject this renewable gas back into the national grid, meaning that the gas produced and upgraded in Nerney is brought here to Cush. The photo on the right-hand side shows us transferring the gas into pressurized trailers, which is then brought the 8 kilometers to Cush and stuck back into the national grid. And then the picture below that shows a sneak peek at the engine room at Cush. People often ask us, well, if it's that easy, why aren't loads of people doing it like the Danish? And unfortunately, the investment required in a project like this is enormous. And this one was co-funded by the EU, Green Generation and Gas Networks Ireland. So I wanted to give you an idea in a very real sense of the emissions that can be saved from using renewable gas. The above information is what you would show as mileage to and from Dublin from Green Generation twice a week. So a return trip is 132 kilometres, twice weekly is 264. So over an annual basis, it is 13,000 kilometres. Commercialfleet.org has a handy little website that translates your mileage into carbon savings if you're using renewable gas. So the journey we've just talked about using renewable gas will save you over 11,000 tonnes of CO2 per year, which we think is really a big win. But what does that all mean? So in terms of planting trees, which a lot of people will connect with, the 11,000 tonnes of CO2 saved is the equivalent of planting 806 mature trees, which is great. In another context, just to give you another little bit of information around it, the average household emits 11 tonnes of CO2 per year. So this is a times 1,000 saving, which is really, again, it's a fantastic result. But it's not all bad news, I suppose, is what I'm trying to get to. A recent report by the EC and Gas Networks Ireland has shown that Ireland has the highest potential for renewable gas production across Europe. And I think we'll need those, we'll need all of that potential. We'll need to harness all of that potential to meet these targets that William just talked about. Ireland's CO2 emissions by sector shown on the right-hand side there, and the transport sector is running up 40%, which is fairly hefty. And that brings me to the topic of decarbonising Ireland's transport sector. So according to the Gas Vehicle Network in the UK, there's no other sector across Europe that is more primed and ready to cut carbon emissions more than the HGV sector, and in particular long-distance trucks. G&I see the same thing, and they've committed to rolling out fast fill gas stations across the country. There's 2 already, one in Dublin Port, and one in Cashel, with another 9 planned over the next period. You can see our couple of HGVs on site there. So we run all biomethane HGVs, which is great. And I know this myself because the little van on the right-hand side is my little caddy, which is, it can take renewable gas, 30 kilograms of renewable gas, and it has a tiny 8-litre unleaded tank as well for those sticky situations. Sticky situations I see is there not being very many gas stations around Ireland. Gas Networks Ireland have done incredible work, but you'll notice there are no stations above Cavan, which for a Donegal woman who drives a renewable gas van, I'm a bit of a thorn in the side of the great work that G&I do. So in order to decarbonise the really carbon intensive transport sector, we'll need to get on with that really fast. So that's almost it from me. I just wanted to give you a quick snapshot of the great companies we work with and we look forward to supporting in their sustainability goals. The future for us at Green Generation is having these conversations with anyone who either has a waste problem, a food waste problem, or who would like to decarbonise their business using renewable gas. That's it from me, Sean. I'd like to once again thank SEAI and Erbia for having us on. If anyone would like to get in touch, all of my details are there, and please feel free to drop me an email. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Teresa, for your presentation. Our next presenter is Noel Gavigan. Noel is the Technical Executive of the Irish Bioenergy Association for the past 12 years. Noel is a graduate of UCD Agricultural Science, has a diploma in management practice from DIT, and a postgraduate diploma in environmental protection from Sligo Institute of Technology. Has over 10 years experience working in the horticulture and agricultural sector, and over 15 in the renewable energy and bioeconomy sector. So Noel will present to us on the role of bioenergy in decarbonising our heating system. So Noel, if you could commence your presentation, and if you could take 10 minutes, we'd have time then for a panel discussion at the end. Thanks, Noel.
Thanks very much, Sean. And again, thanks for SEAI for the opportunity here to present on this. What I'm going to just concentrate on very briefly is large-scale bioenergy use for heat decarbonisation, really looking at large-scale units, and so predominantly looking at industrial pieces of equipment and what can be done in that area. Just a quick one on the Irish Bioenergy Association. This slide will be given to you afterwards anyway, so you can have a look at what we do. It's been an organisation that represents the industry, established 22 years ago, and still going very strong. We represent all areas of bioenergy, from biogas to solid biofuels to your liquid biofuels for road transport. So you have plenty more information on our website on that. Two of the things that we do which are very relevant to this sector in terms of ensuring that the industry is operating correctly and ensuring that the industry is able to step in and take on large-scale heat use. The first thing is fuel quality. And we set up the Woodfield Quality Assurance Scheme back in 2009, along with assistance from the Department of Agriculture, NSAI, SEAI and Waterford IT. And within that, we ensure that fuel suppliers are producing wood fuels to the proper European standards. And also within that standard, there is sustainability requirements. And the big question always when it comes to bioenergy is ensuring that it meets sustainability requirements. We're very comfortable with material we produce here in Ireland because we know where it comes from and we can prove the sustainability of it. So it's a big part of what we do here in terms of making sure that the fuel supply itself is fit for purpose and is fully sustainable. We have 30 certified suppliers nationwide. We get continued support from the Department of Agriculture in that scheme. And if you want to just check the website there, we have that you can see the map there of the suppliers detailed around the country, and there's more details on that on the website there. So the other thing that we started doing in January 2019 is certifying of installers and designers of systems. So again, this is a very important part in ensuring that those that are involved in the industry are properly trained, know what they're doing. Biomass boilers themselves are very well designed, but in order for them to work correctly, they have to be installed correctly, and all the infrastructure that goes around them needs to be properly designed to work correctly. So it's we started that scheme about a little over 2 years ago with support from SEAI or D&D support. So it's I'm not sure what number we've certified now, but I do know there's a good number there, in around 20 or so certified installers in the country and designers. Looking at where the potential sources of renewable heat, now Paddy Phelan already outlined that the heat plan is going to be launched very shortly. Within that plan, there's some very interesting information for Ireland in where we can get our heating requirements met in a sustainable format. Now, I won't dwell too much in the slide, but again, there'll be far more information on this in that report. But Ireland's heat demand is about 56 terawatt hours. That's the entire heat demand for domestic, for commercial, industrial, for all sectors is 56 terawatt hours. We actually have resources for over 70 terawatt hours. So within the country, we have plenty of resources to actually meet that demand. So it's really a case of getting things moving and getting the infrastructure in place and getting the industries in place to meet that demand and be able to, we have every opportunity there to actually go to, where the plan is looking at a level, less than 100%. We actually have enough to go to the 100% level if we have the wherewithal to do so. So it's just an important point to look at there. Within the bioenergy sector, really we have three main areas in provision of heat. One is wood pellet. So predominantly that goes into the domestic market, commercial and small industrial is where most of it will go. Wood pellet predominantly in Ireland, or almost as exclusively, comes from sawdust coming out of wood processing. So we obviously harvest our forests. We to produce lumber for the building sector, for other uses like that, and we have large volumes of sawdust coming out of that sector, and that all of that goes into wood pellet. Wood chip again is a byproduct of the forestry part of that industry, where you have pulpwood, where you have tinnings, and the material that is not suitable for saw log can be used as wood chip as a fuel source. So it's a very abundant source. In fact, it's the largest source we have, and there's huge volumes available there in that. Biogas, trees as looked at already, so I won't dwell too much into that, but we can upgrade biogas into the grid and use that in gas boilers all around the country. Or we can use standalone units, which we're doing a project on at the moment, in particular where you have the feedstock on site. You can use that heating on site as well, so which is a lower cost option. So again, where the bioenergy's role and why is it important? Just very quickly, on a worldwide platform, bioenergy provides 2/3 of all renewable energy that's out there. So when you take in hydro, wind, solar, geothermal, they're about 1/3 when you add them all together. But bioenergy provides 2/3 of the world's renewable sources of energy at this point in time. On a European context, about 10% of all energy, 10.3% of all energy, is coming from bioenergy. The other renewables are coming up at a little over 7%. That's increasing a little bit since that. But as you can see, bioenergy is a major player already, and we have very well developed industries and technologies right across Europe. Not as strong here in Ireland. We're not at near 10% here, but we have across Europe very strong industries that have really taken up the baton on this. The value of biomass compared to oil. Now, just do this, it's a very good comparison to look at the economics, and it's always a question of what goes on. So what I'm doing a comparison here is, if you take 1,000 litres of kerosene, it's the equivalent of 3 tons, or to replace that, you would need 3 tons of wood chip to get the same level of energy. And if you look at how the cost breakdown on that is, I won't go into the minute detail on it, but we're currently paying 61 cents per litre. Some of that is VAT, some of that is carbon tax, some of that is transport, and then the remainder is the price it costs the oil to come out of Rotterdam or a refinery, or wherever that refinery happens to be. And that's where the cost is made up. So out of that total cost, about 610 euros. The exported funds out of that are about 370 when you take out the taxes and transport. So there's quite a lot of export funds going out of that. In terms of wood chip, the cost for that, it's currently trading about 130 euros a tonne, and it's stayed very steady over the last 10 years. It doesn't fluctuate. It was 120 10 years ago. It's about 130 now. Again, looking at that, the overall cost per tonne comes out at 147. The customer cost there is at 440 euros. So there's a customer saving of about 170 euros straight out. Now, obviously, it's pay for a boiler to operate it, but there's 170 euros on a flat rate fuel use basis. So the other interesting point in that is, though, that the vast majority of the money that is spent, of that 442, remains in the local economy. It remains within Ireland and generally within about 50 kilometres. There's only about 50 euros of all that spend that is exported or goes to buying equipment, or be it the boilers, be it the machinery. That's money that leaves the economy. So, but wood chip as a material itself really supports the local economy, as well as getting approximately about, for 1,000 litres of kerosene, you're talking a little over 2.5 tonnes of CO2 being saved. So it does make a major difference. In terms of greenhouse gas emissions, it's a little difficult to see on my screen. It possibly is for yourself as well. The wood chip and wood pellet are the first two blocks there. This is the emissions in grams of CO2 per megajoule. So wood chip is at 4 grams, wood pellet is at 7 grams. The next two are basically related to biogas. One is for biogas coming from slurry, the other is biogas coming from grass. The tallest one there is kerosene at 80 grams. So compare that with wood chip at 4 grams. Kerosene is at 80 grams. And the next one over is heat pumps. Now, this is based on figures 2 years ago where your electricity grid was at 400 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour, but it's 36 grams per unit of heat. Now, that'll have down to about 18 if we get the grid all down to 200 grams. So, but it's still relatively high compared to the wood chip and the wood pellet. So wood really does deliver huge carbon savings, and it is something that really should be central to the mix. But there's a need for all technologies. Now, very quickly on this one, we have loads of different uses with it. That's just a breakdown of the industrial, residential, and tertiary use. The middle graph is what we already fuel all that by. And the last one is important in terms of where that heat is used. And we have to break down the heat sector into, you can break down to domestic, industrial, and tertiary if you in one way, but also the temperature. If we're doing space heating, we're looking for in a room 20 degrees. If we're looking for process heating in an industry, we're looking for 100 degrees, we're looking for 400 degrees Celsius. And those sort of temperatures can only be reached by biomass or biogas. So the bioenergy sector is the only renewable source of heat that can provide those sort of temperatures, with the exception of electricity, which would be more expensive. So it's well worth bearing in mind that the bioenergy has a huge part to play in that. Again, a little bit on the sustainability criteria, you can read into that a little bit further, but I won't in this presentation. Just to give you an outline of large biomass plants, we have a number in Ireland as it stands. Danone there, the 4 megawatt steam boiler, Arrivo with a 10 megawatt steam boiler. And again, they're large industries in the dairy sector that need large volumes of heat. They need high temperature heat with steam. And the only way of taking that on board is really with bioenergy. Danone, that site is the first carbon certified neutral plant in the world, and they got an achievement there I think it was late last year. So the other one then is that I have here is a Stellis. Stellis is a 1.8 megawatt biomass steam generator on that site, and it's a very interesting one. It's again rooted in pharmaceutical, and they obviously have it's a very, very high efficient plant. It's ISO 50001 certified, and they rely on steam coming from biomass, and it has worked very well for them. And they're a little over 10 years in operation at this point in time, and there's many others around the country in different industries. I just want to give you a quick rundown through district heating in terms of its value to us. And it's a good example of where large-scale bioenergy can fit in to these systems. So Sonorome in Denmark, they put in a 4.6 megawatt district heating plant in the last decade, fueled in wood chip. What was interesting on this one, though, is when they originally put in the district heating system was run on coal in the 1950s. In the 1970s, they changed it over to gas, and now they're changing it over to biomass. So district heating as a concept works very, very well, and you have a huge resilience to change fuel as technology changes. So the next example is an even better example of that, which is just up the road. Again, it's a similar size boiler, but what happened in this town is they put in, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, you can, I think, but this boiler was put in to serve the town. Then DuPont Nutrition, who have a large manufacturing facility in the town, have put in their own biomass boiler. And the value of district heating is they're able to supply heat to the town as well as to their own industry. So their surplus heat can be used to supply the district heating system. And it just shows that they're also looking at heat from a data center as well. So that district heating works very, very well in these sort of towns. And biomass often plays a central role in those, in providing the base load. And you know, again, you're looking at very large scale there, 4 megawatt up. You know, Copenhagen system, I'm not sure what size that is, but 95% plus of Copenhagen runs on a district heating system. So and again, with a large base of biomass. So a couple of policy interventions that we do need to decarbonize our heat and really capitalize on bioenergy. So green public procurement for buildings, we really need to get that rolled out as quickly as possible. Only in the last week we were sent we've seen a tender for a third level institution in the northeast that has put out a tender for a gas. So they're going to put in a gas boiler, and they're tied into using that fuel for the next 20 years. Whereas it really should be opened up to any option that can provide that heat on a renewable front. So whether it's biomass, whether it is renewable biogas, but it should be opened up rather than it being fixed on a fossil fuel. I think we need to be looking at how public procurement runs those things. So then the support scheme for renewable heat, again, possibly widen it out for the larger scale. We do need to see an implementation of Article 23, RED 2 Directive, basically a heat application scheme, and some supports for the domestic heating sector as well. I'm a little bit over my time, so I'll close up with that, Sean. I might just hand back to you there. I know you're working to a roundtable.
Thanks very much, Noel, for your presentation. Very interesting. So we'll now quickly move. We have about 8 minutes left before the end of the session. So we'll quickly move to a mixture of a panel discussion plus a Q&A. So we have a couple of questions in here. So I'll call on Teresa first, then Noel, and then Paddy to conclude. So Teresa, just I suppose one question for you, and it's similar to a question from Stephen, who has posted it through the platform. Would you be able to outline what the obstacles and the opportunities are for biogas, biomethane industry in Ireland to decarbonise our heat and transport and electricity sectors? And Stephen was also wondering, why are we not considering large-scale cooperative-style systems where to group farmers, local food waste producers together, similar to what happens in Germany, Switzerland, and Denmark? So if I could just ask you to comment briefly on that for literally a minute and a half. We'll then go to Noel on the other couple of questions. Thanks, Teresa.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sean, and thanks for the question. I suppose in terms of obstacles, we need government support, we need policy support in getting more of these renewable gas stations set up. So there's a capital intensive investment required, upwards of €2 million. So, like I said on the map there that G and I have of all of these stations that are going to happen over the next few years, we really need those all over the country. Industry are sort of leading the way, but they're nervous too about jumping feet first into opening up these gas stations. But I think if we had a little bit more of a focus from the government on the bioeconomy and making sure that we're harnessing all of that food waste as feedstock, then we could be really getting somewhere. In terms of how the Europeans treat their food waste and cooperative styles and feeding into anaerobic digesters in certain parts of the country, I think there's a huge education piece around that. I think we, as a country, we're a bit slow to get to the recycling efforts that would replicate our European cousins. So I think if there was a little bit more education on what goes in your food waste bin, we could really take it from there, because all of that power and all of that food waste can be harnessed to get a better value out of it. But looking in food waste bins these days would dishearten you, because there's a lot of contamination, and that's just no good for generating power. So yeah, lots of government support needed. Really a refocus on the bioeconomy would be brilliant.
And just Teresa, just one final point on that support. Yes. That's to bridge the gap between the cost of production of biogas and the cost of, or the price of gas on the gas grid. Is that correct? Yeah.
So it's replicating what they have in Northern Ireland. They've got feed-in tariffs there that we would love to replicate, because we'd be on a level playing field there. But just general support across the board for the bioeconomy. There needs to be a refocus from the government.
Okay, thanks very much, Teresa, and thanks for your presentation. I'll now just go to Noel. Noel, you mentioned in your presentation that bioenergy, and particularly solid biomass, has a key role to play at all levels of heating, domestic, tertiary, industry, but also at all temperature ranges, and particularly for bioenergy at a high temperature range. There's one question in here from Stephen. He's asking about the potential for waste heat in a district heating system. So would you comment maybe further about the options from a district heating point of view, but also elaborate slightly more on what you've said earlier in terms of the role of bioenergy and particularly solid biomass? And if you take 2 minutes, and then we give the last 2 minutes to Paddy to conclude.
In terms of, look, the district heating systems are, when there is waste heat, I'm aware of another plant where they attracted industry into the town on the basis that the industry could sell their waste heat into the district heating system. And it makes a town very efficient when you can have link industry to the other sectors of the town, and they can all buy and sell heat into a proper mature district heating system. The best example, again, probably worldwide, is Copenhagen, where you have everything from power stations to waste incinerators to biomass plants to selling and heat into the grid. So absolutely, waste heat is a major part to play in that. In terms of the temperature profiles or the use for biomass, yeah, look, that and the biogas can fit very strongly into trying to decarbonize our large industry, where you need high temperatures. It's quite difficult to decarbonize those without, or it's next to impossible to decarbonize them without those two options. You can use electricity, as I said, but that's more expensive. If you want that large scale heat pumps are very good for space heating and for where you want low temperature heat, but where you need high temperatures or anything above, say, 60, 80 degrees, when you're going above those temperatures, really and truly, your options are limited down to the bioenergy side of it. And it lends itself for both large scale and small scale options there.
Okay, thanks, Noel. If you could briefly comment on one question that's come in here from Ian. He said, why did and I know your topic was the biomass, but just on the anaerobic digestion side, why did the anaerobic digestion installation decide to supply methane rather than generate electricity? So obviously it's a question for you, Teresa, as well. I think you are supplying, you're producing electricity, but also methane. So Noel, do you want to quickly comment on that?
Well, I suppose it comes down to there's economics involved, obviously, as well, and what supports are available. But also, it comes down to every renewable has its strengths and its weaknesses. And we need all renewable options on the table. We need to make sure we use the strengths of those. Like, for example, wind is very good at producing low cost electricity, and solar is good at that as well. But obviously, there's intermittency issues. Okay. But if you want heat and large scale heat, biomass really fits in, the biogas fits in, and so it really depends on what you're trying to provide and what need you're trying to
support schemes that are in place probably as well.
The support schemes, the policy measures that are there really do, we see a huge amount of electrification, biogas using electricity in Germany. We see more injection going on in other countries. It depends on what supports are there.
Okay, Paddy, and we'll give you the final parting word. We have just 2 minutes left. You mentioned, Noel mentioned about 67.2% of the primary energy supply of renewable globally is bioenergy. Would you just maybe comment about maybe why we haven't more widespread deployment in Ireland, and just finalise, maybe sum up on the opportunities as a concluding remark?
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, I suppose bioenergy is something that we're all familiar with. Everywhere we look and see, we can see biomass. The opportunity is often around, energy recovery and utilization. So how do you recover that potential energy? You're going back to thermodynamics and understanding how to convert that into a usable form. So, on an international scale, at the European level, we'd see a much broader and wider usage of biomass. When you look at the potential, if you see the Danone model, Noel touched on it there. That was a collaborative community approach, working with the local development companies and the local communities to develop, through their own corporate social responsibility model. But they had to bridge the gap between the cost of the technology and the supply chain, and signed long-term contracts with local growers through the Wexford Grower Group and the broader southeastern region, in partnership with the local development company in Kilkenny Leader, and a Vulcan project. And ordinarily, when you see those projects come through to fruition and delivered, and you see their carbon certification, the value is not being delivered back to Danone or not being delivered back to the farmer for having achieved that. So valuing the carbon reduction is an area that is absolutely pertinent, and the real opportunity comes back to price. So the price to produce and deliver is never going to compete with wind or solar, but at the same point, wind and solar cannot supply us our decarbonised energy system.
Okay, and on that note, I'd like to thank you, Paddy. I'd like to thank Teresa, thank Noel, and thank William for joining us earlier, but also thank the SEAI for the opportunity, and also thank all our attendees today for, apologies we didn't get to all of your questions. But look, we leave it at that, and wish you all a good afternoon. Thank you.